Is the hype surrounding Oklahoma getting a little bit out of control heading into the 2025 season? Maybe, but I'm not the person to ask since I am one of those stirring the Crimson and Cream Kool-Aid out Norman. I love every single move that the Sooners made this offseason, with the hiring of Ben Arbuckle, to targeting the #1 transfer portal quarterback, to fortifying your run game with a former all Pac-12 rusher, and adding in some other pieces that are going to bolster this defense this fall out in Memorial Stadium. And I get it. Expectations are high, the schedule is daunting, and we don't know if Brent Venables is the right guy, but everything I think can come together because of what the identity of the roster is. And maybe they are a dark horse for the college football playoff, but they're going to need these 3 bold predictions to happen to make that a reality. So what's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Sooner Nation, like the video, hit the ring notification, and subscribe to the channel because we talk Oklahoma football and college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show. Check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com and follow us on the socials at SEC Unfiltered. And as always, we're proudly fueled by our friends over at FANDUEL. Go to FANDUEL.com/SECU. Join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. You think Oklahoma's going to hit the over and wins? Hammer that line. You think that John Mateer is going to win the Heisman Trophy? Hammer that line. You think the under is going to hit? Do so, but make sure you do so at FanDuel.com/SECU. So 3 bold predictions. Remember, these are bold, out of left field. So that means when I'm right, you come back here and say, Cole Thompson had it first, and when I'm wrong, well, it was a bold prediction. It wasn't supposed to come true anyways. Bold prediction number 1. I think that you will see Oklahoma lead the SEC and finish top 5 in the country in sacks. I do. Because let's go back to the very beginning. Zach Alley leaves from Morgantown, West Virginia. And Brent Venables, knowing that this is a prove-it year for him and his staff, had 1 of 2 options. And it was, I can go outside and hire somebody. Jim Knowles is a really good name that I would love to bring down here. Or I can bank on myself, knowing my defense, knowing what works and knowing what doesn't, knowing what personnel I have to actually benefit me and go out swinging. That's what I can do. And so he chose the latter. And honestly, I think that was a smart move. When it comes to coaches just in the SEC that I trust to run a defense, one side of the football, very few I'm picking over a guy like BV. He is absolutely locked in when he is a coordinator. And we saw the same success last season with Clark Lee, knowing that he had to meet certain expectations in Nashville if he wanted to be back for 2025. So kind of the same thing goes for 2026 out Memorial Stadium for BV. Now that we know that Joe Castiglione is leaving and Jim Nagy may want to make a change when it comes to the head coaching spot. But I look at this defense. Yes, you did lose some talent, especially at the linebacker spot with Danny Stutzman. But you didn't lose a lot much. You still have Maniac Williams as your nose tackle. And behind him, you still have David Stone, who thought about entering the transfer portal, but he's decided to come back in for another year. You bring in Marvin Jones, who I think is going to be an upgrade opposite of R. Mason Thomas. Jaden Jackson and Grayson Halton could both be really strong run stoppers and definitely forceful players in the interior to win one-on-one battles. And then look at the linebacker position. You still feel really confident that Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Kendall Dolby, and Kendall Daniels can be your 4-man front that gives you that pressure. Delayed blitzes, maybe you send one as that cheetah role in the same way as Isaiah Simmons when BV was out in Clemson. There's an opportunity for any single one of them to win their battles against insufficient offensive lines. And there will be some teams that have insufficient offensive lines that you go up against this fall. Nobody knows what to make of South Carolina's offensive line going into the season. I don't really know what to make of Michigan's offensive line going into week 2 at Memorial Stadium. Texas is replacing 4 starters in the Red River Shootout, which may end up bolstering a win in favor of John Mateer. And you still have question marks when it comes to Missouri, and you could throw in an Ole Miss for that matter as well. So the bottom line is that when I look at a Brent Venables defense, when I look at what BV can call and what he understands about his unit, his front 7, what works and what doesn't, you really want me to bet against him? Honestly, in my opinion, the best defensive mind in the SEC when just focused in on actual plays, outside of Kirby Smart, of course, but still, you get my point here. Last season, Oklahoma finished 26th nationally with 35 sacks and averaged 2.69 sacks per game. I think that number increases. I think we're talking closer to 45, maybe even 50. The number to beat last year in the SEC was Ole Miss at 52. I think that you can get to that range, especially if you have R. Mason Thomas coming off the edge, especially if you send delayed blitzes with Robert Spears Jennings, especially if you get Kendall Daniels to live up to the expectations when he was the former Oklahoma Player of the Year and the Big 12 newcomer freshman of the year when he was at Oklahoma State with the Pokes. If you have that identity, there's a lot to like about this defense being the backbone of your team, while the offense is figuring out some things really early on and then eventually taking on our games. Bold prediction number 2, the wide receiver room is going to be better this year. It is, because if you will have a healthy Deion Burks, you have Giovanni Gibson coming on in. I think Isaiah Satenga coming on in from Arkansas is going to be an underrated move. But none of those would be bold to say that they end up taking over games and kicking ass. No. You got to go bold with this one. So bold prediction number 2, how about we go with the freshman, Elijah Thomas, leading Oklahoma in every receiving category. Now, again, these are bold takes, but I listened to John Mateer and what he had to say about his wide receiver, about the freshman from, and I'm going to butcher the name, so please don't be nice. Please be nice to me in the comment section. Chicada, Oklahoma. I know I butchered that. But to hear John Mateer say he's doing great, an athletic freak, you can see him in the weight room. His weight room lifts his running times. He's picking up the offense and the game real well. It's not all the time that a freshman receiver can feel the way he does, but he feels the game real well. You hear that from your starting quarterback, you got to have a little bit more confidence. He's wearing number 0. So that means that 0 cornerbacks are going to be able to shut him down. And he was highly productive during his time when he was in high school. Remember, he was the 128th overall recruit and the number 1 recruit in the state of Oklahoma, according to 24/7 Sports and Rivals. Number 2 by on 3. Last season, over 1,800 receiving yards and 26 touchdowns on 72 receptions. And that's not including what he did in the backfield with over 400 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns. Plus, he also had a 99-yard kickoff return. He's got speed, he's got agility, he's got a good catch radius, and somebody has got to step up as the long-term player at that wide receiver 1 role. Just like we saw with D.D. Westbrook, and just like we saw with Hollywood Brown, and just like we saw with C.D. Lamb. And I'm not going to put the pressure on a guy like Elijah Thomas to become CD 2.0 overnight. That's unfair. But what I will say is, if the intangibles are all there, and he's caught up to speed in what Ben Arbuckle's offense is. Because remember, everyone is starting fresh in this offense. Deion Burks, Isaiah Satenga, Giovanni Gibson. Everyone is starting on over besides John Mateer for what they were running out in Pullman, Washington. If he's the guy, if he ends up being the big-time X factor and is averaging 89.2 yards per game, and he's catching 8 or 9 balls, and he's big in the red zone, and it feels like at times, hey, Mateer, just look for number 0. He's wide open down the field. It's the big red easy Staples button. Smash it. There you go. 6 points to the house. You got to feel pretty good about the direction that Oklahoma is going in past this year, because John Mateer doesn't have to go pro. You still could have veteran offensive line play that's only going to get better with time going into next season. And it's abundantly clear that as long as Ben Arbuckle is calling the shots, he's going to set up his wide receivers to have success. So I look at Elijah Thomas. I think that Deion Burks can have a great year. I think Giovanni Gibson coming on in from Arkansas Pine Bluff. That's speed. You can't teach it. And he was on a path to be one of the breakout players throughout all of the training processes and maybe going into fall camp before the injury. I think when you throw in guys like Keontez Lewis, then you got to mention, of course, what you bring in with Isaiah Satenga, and you still have Ivan Caron, and you still have Zion Kearney. I just look at what Elijah Thomas could be and the way that people talk about him on campus and the way that his expectations are about to expand. Could it shock you if he starts to set his own legacy at a place where wide receivers flourish? We already saw it with Ryan Broyles. We already saw it with D.D. Westbrook. Already saw it with Hollywood Brown. We saw it with C.D. Lamb. Why not go ahead and start the new era of Thomas tyrancy in year 1 in Norman, Oklahoma, Memorial Stadium, every Saturday afternoon? Just a thought. Just saying. You got to have a wide receiver number 1. He has the mold. He has the ability, I think, to reach those levels. And bold prediction number 3, you don't need to go to the college football playoff anymore to win this award. You don't need to go to the SEC championship to win the award. And we know this because just 2 years ago, we saw as Jaden Daniels led one of the most potent passing attacks in college football history to a 10-win season out in the Bayou in Death Valley, Baton Rouge, Louisiana for the Tigers. And he won a Heisman Trophy. Bold prediction number 3, John Mateer is your Heisman Trophy winner. He has everything that you want. Everything. Not only does he carry himself with a poise and pedigree that emulates what you saw with Baker Mayfield, with the agility of a Kyler Murray, and with the physicalness of a Jalen Hurts, all 3 guys who represented the Sooners out in the Big Apple, 2 of which won the award, he also has all the intangibles you want as a quarterback. Now, so many people are going to turn to the production that he had when he was in the quote-unquote Pac-2, even though it was a Mountain West schedule. But you were playing against weaker competition. You weren't playing big boy Saturday football down the South. You're going to learn today. Yeah, well, we also said that about Texas, and what did they learn? They were dominant, and they were dismantling opponents, and they punched their ticket to Atlanta in year one of the SEC title. So that could be John Mateer. When you lead the country in total scrimmage yards, when you lead the country in total touchdowns, when you have still a passer rating in the hundreds, when you have a completion percentage at times over 60%, and you have single-handedly won your team games, I don't really care what level you play at. I don't really care if you come from Bumbleskunk University or you come from the Hartman Institute of Technology. Doesn't matter to me. You play up to a certain brand of football, you're going to be successful. And the bottom line is that this is not a John Mateer that's learning the ins and outs of playing in the SEC for a new personnel. No, it was a package deal. When Ben Arbuckle said, I'm leaving Pullman, Washington, he made sure that John Mateer had a front row seat to go be the starting quarterback in Norman. That was a package. So you have a guy that isn't learning anything new. He's just getting more comfortable in the system that he mastered last season when he was playing for the same offensive coordinator. And you have a good wide receiver room. And the mobility, I think, is going to be a factor behind Bill Beatonbow's offensive line. And I think that you are going to have several wide receivers that can take over games. And you also have one of the better running backs in the SEC with Jaden Ott coming on in. So you add all this together, the numbers are going to be through the roof. And whether or not Oklahoma punches its ticket to the dozen dance, as long as they are competitive, as long as they're in that 9-3 range, which Oklahoma very well should be, especially with the way they've attacked the portal and the recruiting this past offseason. If they can be in that consistency, what are we talking about with John Mateer? 4,500 passing yards, and you throw in another 800 rushing, 56 total touchdowns to 60 total touchdowns, averaging 6.1 yards a run, maybe double-digit touchdowns on the ground. You also have a completion percentage around 60%, winning several big games, whether it be against South Carolina, against Texas in the Red River Shootout. Maybe you say it's against LSU to close out the season and punch your ticket to a double-digit win season. Add all this together, it just screams that this feels like a year where absolutely no questions asked. John Mateer, Big Apple, just like Baker, just like Kyler, just like Jalen Hurts. But unlike Jalen Hurts, he's walking away with the title. College football's finest player in 2025, as God intended when he made Oklahoma quarterbacks. But let me know in the comment section down below, what are the bold predictions that I didn't target enough? What are some other bold predictions you have for the Sooners? Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure you're following us on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, at SEC Unfiltered, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Until next time, folks, I am Cole Thompson. Boomer! I promise you guys, you got the quarterback. Now all you need is a couple of breaks, and you're in the college football playoff. Bye.